He stepped off the plane with a notebook full of questions and a heart drowning in grief. The city glittered beneath him as his flight descended. New York, the promised land of truths and lies, skyscrapers and shadows. He had read the myths, a hidden civilization beneath the subway tunnels, a cult that believed suffering unlocked secret doorways, and a missing train from 1903 that was never found. But what truly pulled him in wasn't the legends. It was a journal, his mother's journal, found sealed inside a Catholic prayer box she'd kept hidden until her death. Inside were scratched symbols, forgotten subway routes, and a chilling line. Track 6 isn't on the map because it leads to what we buried. It wasn't a metaphor. She had been part of something old, unspeakable, and unfinished. And now, the boy who once prayed beside her bed was tracing the same steps into a city that didn't forget, but knew how to hide. Like this video, subscribe to Mystery Cults, and comment if you believe in forgotten truths. He checked into a budget hotel near downtown NYC using a fake name. No cameras, no paper trail. He wasn't here to sightsee. He was here to vanish quietly into the questions his mother died with. That night he sat by the window, watching the lights of a city that never slept. He scribbled into his notebook the first entry of what he called the descent. Day 1. No one talks about the 6th track. Even the subway workers changed the subject. But someone slipped me a keycard today. No name, just a rusted insignia of an open eye inside a triangle. He pocketed the card and boarded the train at 3:06 a.m. The city above was silent, but below, the tunnels hummed like something alive. As the train pulled away from the station, he noticed it. No lights, no stops, and no passengers, except for one old man sitting at the far end, clutching a candle, whispering scripture, not found in any Bible. The farther they went, the colder it became. His breath fogged the window, but the glass wasn't reflecting his face anymore. He leaned closer to the glass, squinting at the reflection that wasn't his. It blinked back, slowly, deliberately, and then vanished. Startled, he turned around, but the only thing behind him was a metal emergency door with faded letters. Restricted, MTA Authority Only, 1903 line. His heart pounded as the train rumbled deeper underground, far past any station he recognized from the public maps. No cell signal, no sound, just the hum of steel and a growing weight in his chest, like the tunnel itself was sinking into memory. Then the old man at the end of the car began to hum, a slow, dissonant tune that seemed to scrape at something ancient in his brain. The boy moved toward him cautiously. "What is this place?" he asked. The man looked up, revealing pale cataract eyes and a cracked rosary wound tightly around both hands. "She sent you, didn't she?" he rasped. "The one who remembered the 6th door." The boy froze. His mother had spoken of doors in her journal, 6 of them, one for each stage of grief she'd written. The 6th was for surrender. "You need to get off before the lights turn blue," the old man whispered. "If you don't, they will see you." Suddenly, the train lights flickered, white to yellow, yellow to deep cobalt blue. His stomach dropped. The old man's candle flared violently, as if hit by a gust of wind from nowhere, and extinguished. Everything went dark for half a second. When the lights came back, the old man was gone. Just gone. No body, no smoke, no sound of movement, just an empty seat and the faint scent of burnt wax lingering in the air. His eyes scanned the car wildly. He was alone. Then, without warning, the train screeched to a halt. No announcement, no station name, just a tunnel carved into rough stone, walls lined with strange murals drawn in red, ancient figures kneeling before a glowing doorway, eyes stitched shut, hands raised in prayer. The door of the train hissed open slowly, and a breath of freezing air swept in, laced with salt, rot, and the metallic sting of something long dead. He stepped off instinctively, notebook clutched tight in his hand. The moment his foot touched the platform, his vision blurred, like time split. He could hear faint voices behind the walls, chanting in a language he didn't know but somehow understood. "Truth is given only to the broken. Truth is taken only by the faithful." was no turning back now. The stone corridor ahead was impossibly silent, but not dead. More like held in breath, waiting. His boots echoed softly over damp concrete, each step met with a sense of descent, not just physical, but spiritual. The red murals on the walls shifted in the flickering emergency light. One moment, they were just crude symbols, crosses, eyes, circles bleeding from the center, and the next, they formed full human figures, bent in torment, chained to subway tracks, reaching upward toward an invisible train. He pressed his hand to one mural. The stone was warm, alive. Something pulsed underneath. Then he saw it, etched into the stone just beneath a painted figure. 1903. They were not lost. They were given. His breath caught. That was the year his mother wrote about. In the margin of her journal, she had scribbled a note beside that same phrase. Given to what? Now he could see the full image. The 11 vanished subway passengers from 1903, dressed in period clothing, eyes hollow, faces resigned, stepping into what looked like a jagged, glowing door beneath the city. But the 12th figure, it had her eyes. H is mother's. He stumbled back, heart pounding, the notebook falling from his grip. As he bent to pick it up, he noticed the floor wasn't just stone. It was embedded with bones. Tiny fragments of human remains fused into the tile like fossils, skulls, teeth, fingers, a cathedral built from sacrifice. Suddenly, a high-pitched metallic sound rang through the tunnel, like metal being stretched. Lights flickered and something shifted in the air, thicker, colder, charged with invisible weight. Then he heard movement, soft, shuffling, like bare feet dragging slowly over stone. From the tunnel's end a figure appeared, tall, draped in layers of black cloth, face hidden beneath a veil marked with a symbol that matched the one on his keycard. In its hand, it carried a lantern, glowing with cold blue fire. The boy froze as it approached. No footsteps, just a strange pressure building behind his eyes. And then it spoke, not with a voice, but in his mind. Your blood carries remembrance. That is why you were allowed in. But remembrance is not the same as understanding. The figure raised its free hand, and the walls began to shift, literally. The murals bent inward, forming a doorway, stone grinding against stone with the sound of distant weeping. Behind it, nothing but black, depthless, agonizing, like 1,000 voices screaming in reverse. He tried to speak, but his voice failed him. The figure placed something at his feet, a rusted subway token inscribed with 2 words, 6th door. Then it vanished into the dark, lantern and all. He stared at the rusted token lying at his feet. Its metal surface pulsed faintly, as if warmed by something internal, something breathing. The words, 6th door, seemed to shift subtly when he blinked, like they didn't want to be read for too long. Carefully he picked it up, feeling a sting as the token burned lightly into his palm. Not enough to injure, but enough to remind him this was no souvenir. As he turned it over, he noticed a second engraving on the edge. Just a single number. 1903. A chill coursed through him. This token wasn't made for him. It was made for someone who vanished over a century ago. His mind spiraled, heart pounding in his ears. Had his mother found this place before him? Was this how she knew? How she began to fall apart in those final months, haunted not by disease but memory? She had written so often about doors, about rituals, about passengers who had chosen truth over return. She used to mutter in her sleep, "They opened it too wide. The light doesn't stop anymore." And now, he understood, those weren't metaphors. They were warnings. The tunnel began to vibrate beneath his feet. The kind of vibration that didn't come from machinery, but from movement, like something massive shifting below the foundations. Then a mechanical voice echoed from a rusted speaker mounted to the ceiling. "Inbound service approaching. Please stand behind the sacrifice line." He looked down. A faint red line ran across the platform's edge. Not paint, dried blood, darkened over decades. And then he heard it. A train approaching. But not like any train he had heard before. There was no engine roar, no rhythmic metal on tracks. Instead, it sounded like whispering, a flood of overlapping voices rising and falling in rhythm, reciting something sacred and cruel. As the sound grew louder, lights down the tunnel exploded one by one, extinguishing in sequence, darken, rushing toward him. And then the train appeared. But it was wrong. The cars were old, pre-modern, made of iron and wood, with barred windows and flickering lanterns inside. Through the grimy glass he could see passengers, or things shaped like passengers. Their faces were pale, stitched at the lips, hands clutched tightly to rosaries, bones, or pages of burned scripture. And at the center car, an empty seat with a lit candle. The train didn't stop. It passed him slowly, deliberately, as if giving him time to understand what he was witnessing. On the final car, scratched in deep grooves, were the words, "Judgment is not given, it is earned." And then the tunnel went silent again. But the candle in the center car, it didn't vanish. It stayed, flickering, on the platform, because the seat was now behind him. He turned slowly. The candle was there, lit and waiting. The air around it pulsed. Beneath it, carved into the stone, was a single phrase. One more must remember. One more must enter. He didn't remember kneeling, but suddenly he was, face inches from the flickering candle, breath shallow, heart thundering like it was trying to warn him. The flame swayed, not from wind, but in rhythm with something else, something beneath the stone, a pulse, a heartbeat, as if the platform itself were alive. Slowly he reached toward the candle, hand trembling, but before he could touch it, a gust of wind slammed into him from behind, extinguishing the flame in an instant. Darkness. Then footsteps. Slow, measured, bare. He spun around, flashlight shaking in his grip, but the beam barely cut through the thick air. From the shadows a figure emerged, younger than the robed one before, female, perhaps early 30s, face veiled but eyes visible, hollow, sad, familiar, too familiar. "Mom," he whispered before he could stop himself. The figure didn't answer, just extended a hand. In it she held his notebook, but it wasn't the one he brought. It was older, worn, burned at the corners, stained. He opened it and immediately recognized the handwriting. It was his mother's, but there were entries he had never seen before. Dozens, all written in the same tight, panicked scrawl, "Don't follow the echoes. Only regret enters the 6th door. If I see him again, I won't survive it." Then a final entry, dated one day before her death. "He'll come here searching for me. He mustn't. But if he does, please forgive me for what I left behind." His hands trembled. She had known, not just about this place, but about him coming here. It wasn't just her past, it was his inheritance. The figure took a step closer. No sound, no breath. She placed a small object at his feet and turned to disappear into the black again. He bent down and picked it up. A subway map. But this one showed 12 lines, 6 visible and 6 overlaid faintly in red, crossing beneath the known ones. He flipped it over. On the back, "Only those who descend can speak truth. Only those who suffer can remember it." His flashlight began to flicker violently. He looked up and saw the walls crawling with motion, hands emerging from the murals, reaching, gesturing toward the dark hallway beyond the platform. They weren't pulling him. They were inviting him. If you were in his place, what would you have done? Let us know in the comments. His fingers tightened around the map, and he stepped forward, one foot crossing the threshold into the hallway of the forgotten line. Behind him, the candle flickered back to life, only now it burned blue. The hallway narrowed unnaturally as he walked, as if the stone itself adjusted to his presence, pressing in, breathing in tandem with his steps. The air changed again, metallic, like rusted iron soaked in seawater, the kind of smell that triggers old memories and unease. The flashlight's beam barely reached ahead and, ow, suffocated by a strange static in the air, like the atmosphere itself didn't want him to see. But then just ahead, an opening, a chamber carved in an oval dome, walls lined with rows upon rows of rusted subway turnstiles. But not for people. They were too small, child-sized. Each turnstile bore a different symbol: an eye, a serpent, a burning book, an inverted triangle with a single drop of blood. He reached out to one but felt heat radiating from it. Touch was not permitted. This place was not about passage. It was about judgment. Suddenly, sound returned. Not speech. Music. A distant choir singing in Latin. But wrong. Dissonant. Inhuman. Backward. The melody pierced straight through his chest, as if unlocking buried grief. He dropped to his knees involuntarily, clutching his head. Images flooded in. Not dreams. Memories. A train station from the early 1900s. 11 people in formal wear, eyes full of purpose and resignation, boarding a train no one else saw. At the edge of the platform, a woman with his mother's face, whispering the same phrase over and over. The sixth door forgets nothing. The sixth door forgets nothing. He gasped, yanked out of the vision by the sound of something dragging behind him. A shadow moved across the wall, massive, silent, hunched. He turned, but the chamber was empty. Only the turnstiles stood still, their bars now spinning slowly without being touched. One of them stopped suddenly, the one with the burning book symbol. The floor beneath it trembled, and then opened. No stairs, just a shaft, impossibly deep, lined with moving shadows that weren't cast by light. The sound of whispering rose from within, and then a voice, clear, familiar, from inside the shaft. "You promised you wouldn't leave me here." He staggered back. That voice, his, but younger, a child, alone, frightened, and then another voice layered on top, distorted Olton, dare, and soaked in pain. "You broke the vow, and now we all remember." He couldn't breathe. He looked around for an exit, but the hallway behind him had sealed shut. No doors, no seams, just stone. That's when he realized the sixth door wasn't a place. It was all of it. Every hallway, every whisper, every crack in the stone was part of a structure built not from brick or bone, but from remembrance itself. This wasn't a descent into a cult's lair. It was a descent into inherited guilt. The air around him thickened, as though the chamber itself wanted him to confess. His thoughts fragmented, skipping between memory and hallucination, but both felt equally real. The shaft in front of him hummed softly now, as if alive, as if listening. He tried to back away, but his feet wouldn't move. Not from fear, but from something deeper. Recognition. Somewhere inside he had known this place would feel like home. Not comforting, just familiar. Like grief he had never processed or guilt passed down through blood. His flashlight began to distort again, colors warping, images flashing. He saw quick glimpses. His mother in a candlelit room, surrounded by veiled figures, her hands covered in ash. The subway map with all the red lines, suddenly dripping like ink. And then, worst of all, himself, much younger, staring at a blank wall and whispering a prayer his family never taught him. A prayer in another language. And then, his body moved. Not by his own command. Something within took control, guiding him toward the shaft. He resisted, legs trembling, trying to regain control, but the ground beneath his feet pulsed, matching the rhythm of a second heartbeat he now felt inside his chest. He fell to his knees again, gasping, and when his hand hit the stone floor, he saw the carvings up close for the first time, tiny symbols etched into every inch of the chamber, forming sentences too small to notice before. Those who follow grief must sacrifice memory. Those who speak the sixth name must forget their own. Only the devout descend intact. His mouth opened involuntarily and a word escaped, a word he'd never heard before but had the taste of ancient ash. Inorath. The shaft responded. The shadows within shifted, and a light appeared, deep below, flickering like a lantern underwater. It wasn't inviting. It was challenging. He gripped the subway token, its heat returning. He held it up toward the shaft, and something responded. Not with sound, but a presence. A weight pressed on the back of his mind, cold and intelligent. It wasn't asking for faith. It was testing it. And then, the wall beside him split open soundlessly, revealing a long downward staircase carved from obsidian, wet with condensation, and marked every few steps with engraved numbers. 666. He stood. Something had changed. Not in the place. In him. He didn't feel alone anymore. Not in the comforting sense. In the watched sense. Observed. Catalogued. Measured. Somewhere unseen voices whispered again. This time, he came willingly. This time, the door will remember. Each step down the obsidian staircase felt like a betrayal of something inside him, something still trying to cling to the surface world, to reason, to the illusion that this was just a search for his mother's past. But this wasn't about her anymore. The staircase turned sharply every 13 steps, with each landing marked by a broken mirror bolted to the wall. He couldn't see his reflection in any of them, only flickers of other people. A woman cradling a cloth bundle and weeping blood. A boy standing in a church pew whispering to something that wasn't there. A subway conductor whose face was a void of shifting static. They looked back at him like they knew him. His breathing grew shallow. The deeper he went, the louder the whispers became. Now layered and rhythmic, almost chant-like. Not chaotic, organized. A liturgy. And at its center was a phrase, repeated endlessly, like the spine of a prayer carve. Dead from madness. He descends not to find answers, but to remember the cost. He staggered as that phrase lodged in his skull like a nail. His mind began coughing up memories that never happened. He saw his mother again, on a bench at a train platform, holding a candle and staring straight ahead at nothing. Only this time, he was the child in her arms, but his face was covered, no eyes, no mouth, only skin. He screamed and the echo didn't come back. Instead, the walls around him whispered his name, not just spoken, but etched, pulsing faintly on the staircase itself in a looping line. Elias, Elias, Elias. He hadn't told anyone his name since he landed in New York. He ran. The staircase curved again, and at the next landing, he came face to face with a door, not metaphorical, not mystical, an actual subway door, rotted and ancient, mounted into the stone like it had been there long before the staircase was carved. It was sealed with iron bars, twisted into a shape that resembled a heart split open. A message scratched in rust ran across the metal. To enter is not to believe. To enter is to forget belief. He hesitated. His instincts screamed to turn back, but when he looked over his shoulder, the staircase behind him had vanished into smooth obsidian. No steps, no mirrors, no path. Time and direction had become illusions. He pressed the subway token into the heart-shaped seal. It hissed. The door opened inward, not into a chamber but into a moving subway car. Lit only by red emergency lights, it swayed slightly, though nothing around it moved. Inside were rows of empty seats, except one. A woman sat at the far end, veiled, rosary in hand, and whispering what sounded like his name backwards. Sail, sail, sail. He stepped into the car like a man stepping into his own grave, slow, uncertain, but pulled by something stronger than fear. The door slammed shut behind him with a sound like flesh tearing from bone. The lights in sight. D flickered to blood orange, bathing the empty seats in a glow that made everything feel pre-burned. The air was thick with incense and static. He could hear the faint sound of crying, but not from the woman. She remained perfectly still, fingers twisting the rosary in a slow, mechanical rhythm, lips moving without sound. The crying came from everywhere else. The walls, the ceiling, beneath the floor. He moved down the aisle slowly, each step triggering faint whispers beneath the vinyl seats. As he passed, Old photos began to appear on the cracked ad panels above the windows. Not digital, aged and curled black and white photos. All of him. Different ages, different places, but all impossibly real. Him at 5, crying beside a hospital bed. Him at 11, staring blankly at an empty chair during a church service. Him at 17, looking into a mirror with no reflection. Him now, reaching towards something just outside the frame. Each photo was labeled, not with names, with numbers. Subject 42, returned, 0, witnessed, 1, corrupted, pending. His stomach turned. He tore one of the photos down and found behind it his mother's photo. Her eyes were closed, a scar shaped like an inverted cross on her temple. The label beneath read, Subject 19, returned 1, witnessed 3, corrupted, complete. He dropped the photo as the lights in the car dimmed again, and the train began to move. Not with a lurch, but a glide, unnaturally smooth. Outside the windows there were no tunnels, just endless rows of robed figures standing shoulder to shoulder in pitch blackness, their faces lit from below by flickering candles that didn't burn. Then the woman at the far end stood, still silent, still veiled. But now she pointed to the seat across from her. It was identical to the others, except for one detail. It had his name carved into the metal. He stepped toward it slowly, unable to resist, as if the very walls of the train were narrowing behind him. The moment he sat, the train shuddered violently, not from motion, but like it had passed through something alive. The woman finally spoke, but her voice wasn't her own. It was his. You've come far, Elias, far enough to forget who sent you. He opened his mouth to scream, but the train lights burst, and everything went black. When the lights returned, they were no longer red, but white, blinding, clinical, humming like an old hospital hallway. The subway car had vanished. Elias now sat alone on a wooden church pew, knees locked, hands trembling in his lap. But this was no ordinary sanctuary. The stained glass windows weren't made of colored depictions of saints or angels. Instead, they showed scenes of disappearances. 11 subway passengers stepping into darkness, a young woman being lowered into a hole while robed figures wept, a child reaching up from beneath the subway tracks as candles floated above him like stars. At the far end of the aisle, where the altar should have been, stood a mirror. No reflection, only moving smoke, forming the outline of someone familiar. His mother, arms stretched, mouth open as if screaming. But no sound came through. He rose to his feet. Every step echoed louder than it should have. When he reached the mirror, he placed his palm against it and felt skin, warm, alive, breathing. Suddenly, his own voice whispered behind him, "You've always known this wasn't about finding her. It was about what she couldn't carry alone." He turned. Nothing there. Then, in the mirror, her face shifted. Her eyes bled down her cheeks. Her lips moved, and for the first time since he arrived, he saw real terror in her expression. She was warning him, but it was too late. From the pews behind, he heard bodies rising, dozens of footsteps, the faint dragging of bones and cloth. Hands reached from the aisle, clutching rosaries, subway tokens, and worn photos of him. The mirror shattered inward with a deafening crack, revealing a gaping stairwell that spiraled upward, made of bone and burning scripture. He was being given a choice. But only one led to the truth, and the truth was no longer buried. It was waiting. If this story shocked you, like, subscribe, and share. Hit the bell icon for the next part. Part 2. Teaser. But what he saw next was never meant for human eyes. Something ancient was still alive, hidden beneath their beliefs. He was never supposed to find that door. The silence wasn't emptiness. It was watching. Part 2 will uncover what even the cult feared. Comment Part 2 if you're ready.